And so we want to welcome you actually to the Marketo User Group Roundup covering all of the August sessions for the Marketo User Group community worldwide. As per usual, I have my co-host with me, Warren Stokes from England. Say hi, Warren.
Hey, you.
Great. And then we have a whole new series of panelists that are joining us for this month as well, too. It's kind of an interesting month in the Marketo User Group community. And I think that's true in business altogether, that August is usually a quieter month. A lot of people are on vacation, a lot of people are on holidays. And so we have a smaller number of Marketo user groups to be able to cover this month. One of the neat things about that is it allows us to get deeper into some of the content and then talk about some of the different things that'll be coming up in September, as well as everybody gets a running start after the Labor Day long weekend here in the United States. So let me introduce you now to some of the panelists that we have that have been kind enough to join us and then to actually jump into the Marketo user group content that was happening here in August. And the first one I have is an oldie but a goodie, Becca Walters, who has run the Iowa Marketo user group and is just in the process of coming back from that. She's the marketing automation manager at Higher Learning Technologies. And I'm going to pass it over to Becca just for a moment, just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how long you've been in Marketo and about the Iowa Marketo user group in terms of like kind of when you started, if you have co-presenters and things like that.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me here, Michael and Warren. My name is Becca. I live in Iowa, which is in the very center of the United States, in case anybody needed a refresher on where that's at. There are people that live here, Warren. So I've been with Marketo. I've been in Marketo since about 2014, so going on about 6.5 years now. And we started the Iowa Marketo User Group in 2018 with my co-host Molly Bodensteiner, who actually has worked with Marketo in the past. And we were getting that ramped up, and we both ended up taking up opportunities that led us away from Marketo. So now that I'm back in Marketo, I'm really looking forward to regaining that leader status of the mug group and getting that back off the ground. But we have had some really small but very intimate gatherings. So it's been really awesome to get those Iowa mugs started, but also get those Marketo users together. So that's been really fortunate to get to connect, especially since we live far apart here.
That's great. Thank you so much. And really happy to have you back for a number of different reasons, and not the least of which is that you've always been a great team member within the Marketo user group leadership community too, just kind of working with other team members and contributing to the conversations that we have privately about how to produce the best content that helps overall digital marketers learn about this marketing automation platform. So there's a lot to be able to learn about. So one of the other people that has been very strong in terms of being able to contribute to that community is our next panelist, Kelly Trentow. Kelly is the co-leader of the Milwaukee Marketo user group. And last month we had your co-host Jay on the panel for the July recap of the roundups. And so happy to have you join us, the other half of that power duo. And so you're the director of marketing automation for Beta Rudder, and you're an agency that's based out of downtown Milwaukee, as I understand it. And I don't think we've really worked together quite as much, but I have seen you around the community, so happy to be on a panel with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and of course what you're doing at Beta Rudder, and then about the history of the Milwaukee user group as well too, and kind of what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here today. So thank you for inviting me. So my name is Kelly, and I do work at Beta Rudder, and we're a full service agency. And we have about 300 employees, so it's a pretty big agency here in Milwaukee. We also have an office in Chicago. And digital marketing is a really big emphasis for us. And I would say I think it's between 30 and 40% of our employees are strictly dedicated into digital marketing. So it's a cool space to be in. Really good vibes, great people. So as you said, like August is a slower month, man, we're ramping up. So August is like getting into crazy time. And so it's been quite busy, which is good. From a Wisconsin mug perspective, I want to give a shout out to Jason, who's on the call with us today, because Jason and I started the mug about, gosh, a little over 2 years ago. So we didn't have one here, and we were traveling to Chicago, taking the train over there to join their mug, just wanting to get involved. And virtual mugs weren't a big thing then, so that's how we got involved. And eventually we started up our own, and the group's been growing. And I do want to do a little plug. We have a mug coming up on the 15th. Would love for everyone to join us. Jason's actually kicking us off with some MOPS comedy. So if you don't follow him on LinkedIn, he's hilarious. He's got a lot of great jokes for people that understand this space. And then Natalie Kramer is going to be joining us, and we're going to be focusing on best practices and use cases for tokens. So that's on the 15th. Sign up to join us.
That's great content. Thank you. And then just also to kind of follow up on that, so that's Jason she's referencing is Jason Reislinger from Percudo. And if you ever see a meme about Marketo on LinkedIn, it's probably from Jason. They're usually pretty funny. He's got a bunch of other content going on there. So thanks, Jay. We really need the laughs in these days and ages. So thank you so much for all of that too. So the other thing I want to jump into here, so let's talk a little bit about the format. If there's a lot of people that are jumping on this call, and I imagine a fair number of you have been on live with us for the first time, and so just want to kind of give you some context in terms of what Warren and I are doing here. We've been doing this. Warren, what did this kick off? Was it February and March? And I think coming into the quarantine where the two of us had just been kind of crisscrossing the world, kind of going to different Marketo user groups.
Yeah. So I think just for about 3 months now or 4 months, I lose track of time, but it's definitely been a great way, especially when everyone's been virtual, to really connect with other people that you ordinarily wouldn't have been able to connect with. And then it just an idea that came on the back of that to be able to digest that content and kind of summarize it. So that then moving forward to today is that hopefully we've got a few more listeners on our YouTube and a few more listeners that would be able to sort of listen to this in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the idea behind this too is these are sessions that we're covering that have happened in the past. They've happened over the past month, which if you're trying to learn about a specific topic in Marketo, makes it kind of difficult to attend something that previously happened. But through the power of YouTube and the fact that a lot of our Marketo user group leaders have been great about recording a lot of their learning sessions and content, we've been able to aggregate all of that material into one unified YouTube channel that's specifically devoted to Marketo user group, virtual user groups. So if you go on YouTube and you search Marketo virtual user groups, you'll find a channel. Made a quick redirect for everybody just to get to it. If you want to share it with colleagues, it's just conversionstore.com/video. That's not intended to be a sales pitch or anything like that. It just is a quick way to kind of redirect to the channel. And once you get in there, I just want to do a quick share. I've revamped the channel a little bit, put in some graphics, but you'll see on our homepage at the very top of every session, you'll have the Roundup recording that'll be there. And then we've also broken up playlists. So if you want to see all the content that the India Marketo user group did, they did a great session on APIs. There's a Marketo webinar, which isn't a user group, but a webinar that Marketo put on how to use APIs. The Auckland user group, Josh Pickles, who was on a couple months ago, and Grace Brebner, and the content they're putting on. The Chicago Marketo user group. So next month, one of the Chicago co-leaders will be on here with us, and they produce really excellent content. Warren was a speaker at one of those a couple months ago in Salt Lake City, and so on and so forth. But all of these sessions are in one spot. They don't cost anything. Just go to YouTube and add it in and subscribe to the channel, please. And you'll have all of the material that you need if you're ever stuck and you're looking for a particular piece of content, something that we discussed today. Go back to that YouTube channel. You'll quickly be able to find it. All right, so let's dive right into it as well too. And I've kind of shifted the order here around because we have such a small number of sessions, and I thought it'd be worthwhile to just kind of dive into August sessions right away. I have September's up there so that we can talk a little bit about some of the content a little bit later on, but thought we would just kind of dive into what happened in August and then just go into some of those different points. So let's jump in and kind of go into a couple of different ones. I know Kelly, you've covered a couple of ones, so let's just start with you and maybe have you kind of talk a little bit, and maybe we could start with the London Marketo User Group that Adele Miller runs around your neck of the wood, Warren.
Yeah, no, totally. So I wasn't lucky enough to go to that, but that recording is up, and there was a really great session on the London mug. Around there was a company called 23 that dived into what makes a good webinar and specifically brought up the data that they were seeing in terms of attendance numbers and things like that, because their point was that everyone is doing webinars, but what actually makes a good one. And I really appreciated it as someone that tries to justify every action or every strange idea that I have with data, really appreciates the fact that when someone actually uses the data in their presentation to go, well, here's how we've done those things to make our webinar invites a little better. So actually, if you're struggling with sort of attendance, registration rates, and you're getting pressure on numbers of those different things, it'd be worth watching that recording as well on the London Marketo User Group. And then there was also Kate from Adobe, who kind of went through the Experience Makers sum up as well. So if you needed a nice summation of those kind of things, she sort of drew attention to how it went from an Adobe standpoint and what they would be looking to then do in the future with some of their kind of virtual virtual events. So it's nicely split evenly between those two different topics, but both great topics from the London mug.
One of the things that I appreciated about the whole session together is it kind of took a tone of, we're all dealing with this right now, having to do things very virtually, and it gave you a little bit of hope of like how people are doing it and doing it well.
Yeah.
One of the things that they talked about with the Marketo experience that they tried to incorporate was other like unique ways of still doing, I would say, like white glove treatment with still having it be virtual. So like they had examples of wine tasting or building cheese trays or building different like planted pots and things like that in different companies that offer up solutions like that just for the virtual space. It was very interesting.
That's really interesting. I'm really interested in, Kelly, from kind of your perspective, given the size of your agency and the number of people that you're working with, was that consistent with some of the data and some of the experiences that you've seen across clients as well too? Like just some of the trends that they gathered, aggregating all of that data. Is that, is the webinar fatigue really starting to set in? And what are you kind of advising people on as we're God, how many months have we been in this thing now? 4 or 5 months now?
Right?
What month is it? I don't know.
We all lost count.
Yeah.
It's true. Like once this all happened, there was so many events that everyone has planned. And I think that quick pivot of how we're going to get this done happened. And I think now that we've all done a few of those virtual events, I think right now, a lot of our emphasis is into planning into what is 2021 holding for us. And that is something that they did address on the London mug was they anticipated it'd be like half and half, allowing people that want to come get that experience, but also having a half of it be virtual. And I don't think anyone really has an answer for it just yet. But I think everyone's trying to make it be the best experience that it can. And I think there's a lot of growth to happen there. And that was something that was also addressed was how far we've moved within like the digital transformation because of this force of all of us using everything virtually. So I don't think that we have the answer for it just yet. I think that we're still kind of like vetting out the right partners and right experiences and what makes sense for the end user to make sure that they're getting the most out of the event. Another thing that I thought was interesting was a stat. It was their video sessions. They kept at 19 minutes because that's where people started to lose interest. And what Marketo found was it was about the same. I mean, their drop off was at about 17 minutes, as people are wrapping up. So I thought that was interesting and a nice little nugget to take away to say, hey, if we're going to be doing these types of sessions, they have to be quick. Our attention spans aren't that long.
Becca,
And
can I pivot to you for a second and then ask? I think if I understand, I know you've switched jobs a little bit, but I think you're in the higher ed space or you're in the learning space now. And with September coming in here and a lot of the kids kind of starting off with school, and I'd be interested to kind of know what you've kind of experienced from content preparation side, specifically on learning and educational material, and if there's any kind of insights that you're getting from that as everybody's kind of prepping for kind of a new phase with learning happening throughout families that are working from home.
HLT really focuses on nursing and dental schools. So we're really big on the nursing and dental side. And so what we're seeing from a higher education standpoint is how do we address the anxiety going back to school? So we're actually trying to figure out the best way to talk to our customers and our account users on how do we address the anxiety and the tension in the room, but also giving them like that hope and that positive spin rather. I mean, we're all hearing the quote unprecedented times right now. So how do we say, here's our new normal, here's how we can help, here's what benefits you have in doing this type of studying virtually, or how you can access these course materials or supplemental materials to make it easier for you to go back to school, even though it doesn't look like our normal back to school. So our biggest push right now is this back to school campaign, and making sure that one, we're not just not addressing the issue, but we're also doing it in a positive light so that we're not adding to the pressure and the anxiety that people are already feeling. So that's been our biggest balance right now.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You kind of look at that session in London really also kind of highlighted that just that kind of that the blending of different materials or different approaches as you're kind of trying to kind of work through how to augment your typical webinar content to really stand out and have a kind of a point of differentiation. Let's shift for a second to, kind of on a similar note to some of the office hours. So looking back on the different events that happened, we have a couple of different sets of office hours. So we have the New York City weekly office hours that Inga Romanoff and Romanoff Consultants and Sanford Whiteman at Technical produce every week, which are just quick, very succinct half-hour sessions. And, you get the benefit of being able to kind of tap into Sanford's brain for a second and learn about some of the different JavaScript and the coding and some of the technical solutions that he comes up with, and you can kind of present some of the challenges you have. And then the champion office hour is on the 18th, which is kind of like this session in the sense that there's 3 different champions that kind of rotate in and out every month that Marketo started doing, which I tried to get into that one. I had a little bit of technical problems accessing it, but would love to kind of get a sense of from the panel and from Warren and anybody else out there about kind of the value of having office hours and being able to kind of come in with ad hoc questions, both to the champion community and, maybe Kelly and some of the other agency people can talk to this from an agency perspective. How great is it just having, colleagues that you're able to kind of spitball with to kind of work through different problems that come up on Marketo on a day-to-day basis in your marketing activities?
Yeah, I'll start that one. It's so valuable. I don't know how to explain it, but like we constantly run into bumps, or like I tested this out and I ran into this thing and this other thing's happening. It's weird. But having other minds there that can think through maybe some of the cracks that you're just not thinking through, because sometimes you're so focused on this should have worked, or I built this way. It's nice to have another person that understands it to kind of work through some of that troubleshooting, or even just figure out the best solution to do it. I mean, we all know that there's 100 different ways you can build something, but what's the best way, and what's going to be the way that works best for my system, my tech, my clients, my data, all of it. But I'm constantly not only reaching out to my team of other marketing automation professionals that I work with every day, but also other people in the community, whether it's through just researching what's been posted on the community, or sometimes like I'll even just call up Jay, I've called up Andy. Like that's some of the great things about this, is you start to make those connections with other people that just get it and know that space. And it's so valuable in what we do, because we all are so passionate about wanting to make the best for whatever we're building, and we all have great opinions and ways to do it, and we can just learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Becca, I'd love to hear kind of, in smaller markets, right? Kind of where you're located. I think it's fair to say that the user base is kind of smaller at a local perspective. And so, what does that mean for you? Are you, how are you keeping in touch with, admittedly, marketing automation can be, really get advanced, especially as we're getting into kind of AI and machine learning and some of these other pieces. So, how are you bridging the geographical distance to be able to kind of make sure that you're on top of all those different topics?
Office hours are definitely great, but connecting, like Kelly said, connecting with other marketing operations professionals, being able to kind of access those minds that are able to are on the same page as you. A lot of marketing or Marketo users here in Iowa are actually one-man shops. So at my current company, I'm the only Marketo user. So at previous companies, I was able to actually send over a program and have someone review it or look at it, or, hey, why isn't this working? And now I don't have that luxury because I don't have anyone else in Marketo in my company. So it's extremely crucial to have some other people that I can connect with and have them look at something. So an office hour is perfect because I know at a certain time every month or every week, I can bring whatever issue I'm running into to this office hour, but also utilizing the community and utilizing those connections with the Marketo community is super important as a one-man shop, because I am so distanced from other Marketo users, but also even in my user group itself, we're so distanced from each other and we're one-man shops. So we really need to be able to leverage each other's knowledge.
I think that kind of parallels what Warren and I kind of go through. Warren, I think it's fair to say, we have smaller headcounts in our respective agencies, but because we've been in so many different Marketo instances, year over year, I find that a lot of my clients kind of come in and they love the value of being able to have an outside perspective who has been exposed to different Marketo features and functionalities or setups that are kind of outside of what they might be able to use. So, is that kind of consistent with what you see, Warren, in kind of your practice?
Yeah, I would also say as well, just on sort of Becca's point, I think it's being able to share in Marketo and have that valuable back and forth conversation. It's a safe space for ideas as well, because it's not just like I'm addressing this problem. Someone else in the room can ask, well, actually, let's take a look at your problem as a whole, and maybe you can approach it differently. And you can't always have that back and forth and conversation over various Slack channels, like the Mops Pro one, for example. Often it's nicer to bring your problem into that safe space where there's not a silly question, because quite often some of these are not recorded, right? So it feels, at least some of the smaller groups that I know that have those more intimate conversations, people can bring a problem and not be judged or not have any qualms about asking it. And even like you touched on the Sanford, the weekly one that they do, Sanford's like you see some of his responses on the forums and stuff like that, and you're like a little bit intimidated. But actually, when you go to the weekly user group, he's so nice and he's so like explains it really well, and it's just it just emphasizes that difference between putting it in text and writing and actually just going, I'm struggling to even explain this problem, and then let someone else interpret that problem. I think I can't underestimate that value there of just having that office hours to just bring that, just bring the problem that you might not even know is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's pivot to actually, it's interesting to kind of pivot that over and then talk a little bit about the personal relationships too. And one of the great things about this month, admittedly, there's a smaller number of sessions, but a lot of those sessions too had a certain informality to them that allows you to be able to kind of connect with people who have expertise on a more personal level, which, that makes a world of difference as you're kind of diving into some of once things get really busy in the fall and kind of rev back up and everybody comes off the summer holidays, it's nice to kind of have those connections too, to be able to kind of follow up. And so if you take a look here, you see a pattern where we have the Bozeman Marketo Virtual User Group, which is in Montana, in the Northwest, the Chicago group, and then something that was really creative was the Houston and Austin, Texas Marketo user groups did a pub night, but they also incorporated a trivia contest in it too, where there was a series of different questions that came in from pro sports to a smattering of Marketo certified expert exams questions that were in there about the platform and about kind of digital marketing overall. And I thought it was really creative. So, Karen Fowler, who's a dear friend who runs the Austin mug, is a co-leader on that one. And Amanda Thomas, who's co-leading the Houston one. You always see them collaborating. They're some of the most congenial, but also, they're just some of the nicest people you have the best conversations with. Are always kind of there to kind of jump in with you, collaborate to put some of these on together. And we talked a couple of months ago, if you look through the recordings, they put on for their user group another pub night, a happy hour night, where they did a tour of a goat farm, of an animal farm, true story, and then that wound up kicking off after the live stream of the farm left. There was a bunch of us that were on that call that had a huge conversation about, kind of wrapping our heads around the early phases of the pandemic and what do we do with our instances. And it got very deep and very interesting too, though, from a marketing perspective. So would love to hear kind of, over the summer, what have the happy hours meant to all of you as you've been kind of networking and kind of interacting with people from that standpoint?
I can take that one, I guess. I mean, as someone who's across the pond from you guys, just being able to connect with people that I ordinarily wouldn't be able to connect with, and not just talking about US specifically, but people like Veronica Holmes. So being able to connect with her, for example, like she produces really good content. So I now know who to follow in terms of great content. And then Jason, who's on the call, if I need a regular supply of memes, I connected through him on LinkedIn, and we've had some good conversations on LinkedIn. But there's another example where making that personal connection gives you a kind of a guide on who to follow in terms of content, but also then who understands different areas of expertise, like maybe like they output different things, or they have a really, actually I've dealt with this problem before, and you'll know that person from being able to go, okay, they've dealt with that, and you then can Slack them afterwards, like I've done, for example, or if I've had conversations on LinkedIn, like with Jason, I've had a conversation with him on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think so. We were talking before this session with Becca, and Becca, you're rebooting the Iowa mug. I think that's fair to say. I can't remember what the downtime is between the time that you paused on the user group community and kind of coming back to it now. And I look at what they're doing in Bozeman. So Bozeman is rebooting as well in a way. So there's a new user group leader there, Kylie Casperson, who is rebooting that. And one of the pieces of advice I gave to them is with a smaller base. They have some really interesting users there. PFL is a local user up there, and who runs a good instance, and they're doing some ABM stuff. And but they are also looking at, okay, what is the user group community going to look like for us in a smaller community, a smaller market? And we're talking a little bit about kind of digital marketing above and beyond the Marketo practitioner side of things. Is you still have to, incorporate digital marketing strategy into whatever it is that you're building with your Marketo instance. So kind of interesting to see the parallel of how they're rebooting their mug, and then kind of what you're doing as well too. So I'd love to kind of, hear some of your thoughts on, and admittedly you're building this out, but what your plans for the Iowa mug kind of going forward.
Well, I think Bozeman and specifically Des Moines, we have a very unique geographical region where we are all pretty spread out. So it's hard, even before all of this virtual meetings were happening, it's hard to get everybody into one spot because people may have to travel over an hour and a half, or maybe even they live 2 hours away from Des Moines. So they're not going to be able to come to an in-person user group. So having a balance of in-person and virtual even before quarantine started, but also making sure that there's a mix of not only like you said, the Marketo practitioner side, and because we're needing to bounce those ideas off of each other, having the time to do that at the end was very valuable during our Iowa user groups, but also making sure there is that level of strategy and bringing in a higher level than just Marketo how-to, but how to be better in the digital marketing space and how to create those strategies and really drive that career. So I think there's a good mix and balance there. It's just figuring out how to get everyone's preferences in order, especially if it's a small, intimate group, making sure you're taking into consideration what times people would be able to meet, if it's in person or virtual, if that's a preference. And typically with a more spread out group, you want to make sure you have some virtual, but people do really appreciate and will make the trek, especially in places like Iowa and Montana. We are not afraid to drive to get somewhere to meet people in person. So there definitely needs to be a little bit of a mixed bag there to, one, cover preferences, but also make sure it's easy to get people together.
Yeah, I remember, one of the early phases, we rebooted, or I rebooted a virtual Marketo user group when the virtual space was almost dead in 2017. And there was the only other virtual user group that was really active was Paul Wilson's Microsoft Dynamics one. And the rest of them had sort of gone into hibernation. Somebody reached out to Marketo Advocacy from Norway, and they wanted to set up a Marketo user group in Norway, in Oslo, because it was hard to find people there, and that was a big challenge. And it was interesting when they set it up, it actually started to take off because there were a lot of other people spread throughout the country or throughout Scandinavia who were also kind of looking for other Marketo practitioners to kind of get into it. So I want to answer a question that came up in the chat room and then pivot on to the other sessions here. Julie Leo asked a question about whether there's going to be another champion office hours next month. So yes, Julie, there is monthly sessions. As far as I know, they're going to continue these on. The next one, I believe, is scheduled on September the 15th. And you can see that on the Marketo Engage website, but we have also outlined it here in a later slide as well too. So we'll give you links in terms of where to sign up for that afterwards. I want to pivot here to the sessions, talking a little bit about two different sessions. So Dallas and the Digital Pie folks, John Bourne, had gone through a session on database quality tips at the same time, and then that sort of marries into a session that the Indianapolis folks had on with Drift about how to fight back against database decay. So Kelly, can I toss it over to you about the Indianapolis one, because I think you attended that one, and then we can kind of dive in. Maybe Warren, you could talk a little bit about the database quality tips, because I think that was a topic you covered in Chicago about a month or two ago too. Kelly?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the Indianapolis mug, the presentation that was from Drift, I was really pleased with it. It was very heavy with like analytics that backed up all the things that they were saying and what they were portraying as far as like how we handle this. And it was interesting because there was a little bit of a spin of what we're seeing with COVID now too, and data decay as people and their positions have turnover. And the importance of keeping data healthy, especially when we're trying to feed that back into sales team and tying that back to time wasted, time lost, money lost, things like that. So overall, when they went through the presentation, they came up with 6 steps for a healthier database. They went through all those steps. And then at the end of it, there was a nice little plug for an offer for a high performance email marketing toolkit, which I believe is still out there if anyone wants it. So the information is there. They do have a recording up, but it's nice to hear these things because I think it's good to be reminded about maintaining a healthy database and why we do things like lead generation and do all the different filterings and keeping an eye on invalid records or just bad data and what we do with it. So it's good to hear about it, and I think timing wise, it's nice to hear about it going into the end of the year, because that's when you really start thinking about how do I clean this slate to start fresh and new in 2021. So I appreciated it, and it was good. I really liked that it was backed by all the stats because I like my numbers.
I was also going to say, like back on the database side, whilst it was a couple of months ago now with Chicago Mug, they did something similar over the June and July period. They had a series, a spring cleaning series, of which I was a presenter on that, and probably not quite as quality as the other ones. I made a cocktail during it. Anyway, that's another story. But they had a really great series of then specific issues within the database. They had people like Andy, they had people like Brooke, also just and Amy Goldfine just presenting on specific areas of the data to clean, and that was just a really nice and timely way of doing that. So that those recordings are all still on there, and it just sort of linked to the whole database quality thing. So I just thought I'd highlight that.
Let's pivot here, looking beyond. So we had two different sessions too that really came into kind of high quality strategy, right? So just pivoting back to the initial conversation that we had a little while ago about strategies. So I see so two Marketo champions, Jules James and Chelsea Kiko, and the North American Mug, talking about sales and marketing alignment, and I thought that was a really interesting session. Kind of went in there with them, and of course a lot of conversations around things like service level agreements, and kind of being able to kind of tie together different ways to make sure that you're communicating effectively between departments and kind of setting common standards and just some best practices around that. And then also kind of want to touch base on the A/B testing strategies that came out of Seattle, and I think that their conversations are usually very deep in terms of
They're not recorded either, right?
they're not recorded. You're right.
Yeah, it's run by Nate, and those ones are never recorded and never recorded purposefully, so that people can bring more sensitive issues or questions they have on that one.
I want to ask you about that, Warren, because I know you do a lot of work in A/B testing. So, or did anybody else if anybody else in the panel attended that one? I did not, but I would love to hear your feedback on it. But I would love to know a little bit more about just some of the overall themes and some of the areas that you think about as you're diving into A/B testing, and what you could have expected to hear about as you're kind of working into your own instance about your thought process going into A/B testing.
I mean, I just have one rule that I apply just generally, which is the A/B test going to benefit you in the long term or the short term? Because my view is now, if you're testing, and I see it a lot, right, where you go, hey, let's test a subject line. It's like, well, why? Like, are you going to be able to differentiate between that subject title? Or are you testing long subject titles versus short ones? Like, turning that into more of a long-term test is the way that I think about the A/B testing. And I think I wasn't able to attend that one either, but knowing Nate, I imagine some of those deeper conversations came up around what I'm approaching with specific tests. So, I mean, that I just have the one rule, which is it going to benefit you in the long term? If so, why bother?
Kelly, how do you approach requests that you get from clients about A/B testing?
I love what Warren said. We're constantly asking why, but other things that I like to look at is what's the problem we're trying to solve for, right? Like what's the strategy behind why we want to do a test, and like what are we hypothesizing against, and what are we trying to get out of it. Another thing that I like to look at is many times when we come to the team, we're like, all right, here we did this test and here's the results and this is what we found. Like they immediately want to hit the ground running and make some changes, and it's not conclusive enough, or it needs to run for X amount of time in order to make good decisions, and one just isn't enough. So many times it's kind of looking at the bigger picture of what are we trying to do, what are we trying to get out of the end, and how long do we want to do this test to make sure that the changes that we're making are worth it.
I like that. It reminds me, I always kind of use that analogy of that movie Moneyball in the book, and when they get frustrated in the Oakland A's and they haven't won all these games right away, and I think they're only like 10 games in or something like that, and the guy comes back and says, you just need to have a bigger data set, so let it play throughout the year, and then they start to win based on that data. Well, it gives us a really good recap of the August events for the Marketo user groups. We've got about 15 minutes left in the session. And so I just want to kind of jump into this. Oh, I forgot I had the slide. Julie, I probably should have showed you this slide as you were asking the question right away. So Marketo Engage Champion Office Hours is September the 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So fieldevents.marketo.com / champion office hours September. It's very long, but go to fieldevents.marketo.com and I bet you they've got redirects to that. And I'll try and put those in the show notes on the YouTube episode for this, so that you have that to be able to easily link back to. And I did a quick recap here in terms of the August session. So if you take a look at what we just went through, we went through about 12 user group meetings, and we have between 12 and 18 hours of mugs, and we finish that off in 45 minutes. So that's the whole value of doing something like this. So let's just quickly talk a little bit about September, and we have a couple of really interesting sessions that are coming up here. Warren, I think you and Chloe are going to be doing your second European virtual mug tomorrow, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't even know what month we're in basically, but I think it's like second or third, but we're doing a back to schools thing because a lot of the kids are back to school. So we thought, well, what are those things that we wish we'd known in Marketo when we first started? And we've had a couple of the champions actually submit some tips. And in the format that I like, I'm actually going into Marketo and sharing how to do that thing. So not just looking at the tips. And then also we've got a speaker from Adobe to just summarize the updates and changes that are coming along with the direction of travel with some of their strategy as well. Russell Henley from Adobe on that, and he's with enterprise sales. So he's spoken with, say, I think he's spoken with Adele and some of the higher profile clients. So he'll be summarizing that. So yeah.
Great. I want to plug a session that I have coming up here too at the end of September on the 29th, the manufacturing mug, and what I'm trying to do now is really put together content from some of these that really relate more to be able to help people as they're using their different Marketo instances. And so what we did actually for this one is we're going to do a panel discussion, kind of similar to this. I like panels a lot because the talent that's there, and we're going to talk about the process of migrating to Marketo. And I've been on a number of different projects over the years where we're migrating to Marketo. And so I've pulled together 3 different people that have done migrations. Courtney Toby, who is new to the champion class this year, who had migrated from HubSpot to Marketo. We have being distracted by Warren's pet. That's here. Yeah, we have another migration that is from a good friend of mine and a previous client in my old agency, Julie Candelon, who's going to be talking about the migration from Act On, and then Naomi Liu, who did a migration just recently from Adobe Campaign to Marketo, and so it'll be interesting to hear some of the initial comments and the feedback that they have on some of the things, because it's always a little bit more complicated than you think it's going to be at the very beginning. Something happens. Either you have a series of landing pages that you haven't identified, or there's a workflow has extra complexity, or there's extra components of your MarTech stack that you need to do something different to integrate than when you kind of planned it initially. And it's just the nature of the complexity of those tools. So we got together 3 of them, and we're going to have an open discussion about that, which I think will be really interesting and really lively for those of you looking to migrate. Kelly, you mentioned a session that you have coming up. Can you just quickly plug in on that for a minute again?
Yes, absolutely happy to. We are doing our next session on the 15th, and it's over lunch, and Jason's going to join us and kick us off with some comedy with his memes, and then Natalie Kramer is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about best practices and use cases for tokens.
Great. I'm looking through our list of attendees, and I just want to check if anybody else has anything coming up. Kimberly Gallitz, if you are doing anything for the Visible User Group, you're welcome to go off of mute, and would love to hear what you've got planned that way. Or is Raleigh on here? Is there anything that they're doing?
Don't know about Raleigh. Visible, we're in planning stages. I think it will be the last week in September. I don't have a date and time yet. And then I will be talking about Visible at the Austin Mug at the end of the month as well.
Okay.
TBD.
Okay, excellent. Well, glad to have you here with us as well too, and your expertise on some of the different new features that are coming out in the Marketo space this past year, and some of your guidance there, especially kind of beta testing some of the AI technologies has been really interesting this year. So really great to see you here and to have you in the community, of course, as well too. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's plug forward here for a second, and then I want to talk about group discussions. Excuse me. So because we're light on content here, we have about 8 minutes left. So we don't have to have a huge discussion on this, but I just want to throw it out to anybody in the audience and talk a little bit about some of the things that you want to work on in this next quarter. And then, we have this YouTube channel with all of these different Marketo user groups, again, kind of shifting back to that. So I'd really love to know kind of what it is that you're working on, and I bet you that there is a piece of content on this channel that you'll be able to reference back that can help you with that. So if I can pick on a couple of people a little bit here, Kimberly, I mean, you're just talking, so I'd love to kind of hear what it is that you're working on right now, because you've done some pretty advanced things from what I know of the instance that you're working on, and would love to kind of hear initiatives that you have planned in the upcoming quarter.
Yeah, good question. We always have a lot, like bite off more than you can chew scenario. So I'm working on updating our preference center and a bunch of that back end stuff, just because we found it to be confusing and fields not talking to each other nicely. And obviously nobody wants their unsubscribe page to be quirky. So updating that. And then I started a recent initiative to connect 4 pieces of software together to create tracking. So I am using SIFT to talk to Marketo, to talk to Salesforce, to talk to Visible, to create reporting on email replies. So that's probably my biggest initiative right now.
Nice. Yeah, I think I believe one of the Chicago series on house cleaning had some topics around preference centers on it, and so I definitely recommend kind of looking at the Chicago playlist too to go back through some of that. It's some of it's really in depth. There's experts from groups like Palo Alto Networks who just they have so much to give that it doesn't do justice for me to try and summarize it, but definitely would recommend that. Stephanie Sweetland is on this call. I want to kind of pick on her a little bit because we did a session together a couple of months ago, and I had a lot of respect kind of seeing the things that you've done, Stephanie, and would love to hear about some of the initiatives that you all are working on in the CVent community. And I think you guys just did a really interesting event yourself for your company this past month too, which is worth noting. But we'd kind of like to see from the Marketo side of things what you're giving head scratches about and where there might be good content to kind of reference back for that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of follow-ups from our user conference last week, which is really exciting. We hosted that on a new virtual event product that CVent just launched. So I've been working a lot on transitioning our webinar programs, making sure all the data is flowing through Marketo, so building that out. So that's been pretty exciting. So it's all about, webinar and event optimization for the rest of the year, but then there's a lot of data that you get from online events. So trying to figure out which data points do we want to build into our scoring programs, which do we have to trigger tasks, and we're going to be leaving the event open until the end of September. So it's kind of like it was live last week, but it's still going. So
Nice.
Lots of optimization that's continuing. So it's pretty exciting.
Nice.
Also, just quickly, thank you guys so much for this overview. I feel like this was so helpful for me. This is my first time attending one of these overviews, so very much appreciate it.
Yeah, we love having you on here, and I really appreciate personally. Thank you for your contributions to it as well too. So you are a very talented marketer. I've been very blessed to have you on the sessions I have. So grateful for your contributions as well with all this. panel, let's talk the sessions that we've had. I think that kind of relate to that. Adele Miller, your session in London seemed to kind of parallel with what Stephanie's talking about here. Is that fair to say? Is she still on here?
Yeah, I think Adele's gone, but I mean the London user groups are always fantastic. Like they've got a great group of people that organise it. So I think it's Emily Poulton, who's now at Facebook, and Adele, who's at IFS. And there's another, I forget his name, but he comes on and he's super technical. I forget his name, but he comes on every now and then and provides some things that will just blow your mind, and just does it so casually as well, which is kind of nice.
Let's go to the panel a little bit about, initiatives that you're working on in the upcoming quarter and kind of learning content that that can be used within the YouTube channel and across the Marketo community. Plans for the upcoming quarter, Kelly? What do you guys have in the pipeline?
Oh man, so much coming down, so much coming down this end of year. I feel like a lot of our initiatives for 2020 kind of got delayed and pushed a bit. So honestly, it's a lot of activation that's coming down, and kind of going into that planning that I was talking about a little bit earlier with what does 2021 hold, especially for events. And if we're not doing some of these things in person, totally fine. What's the best experience that we can give in order to reach whatever our goal and objective is? So it's a little bit of planning, a lot of bit of activation, but it's just a lot of heads down time.
Becca?
So I'm migrating HLT from MailChimp to Marketo. So I'm setting up, I'm setting up nurture programs currently to kind of get them away from MailChimp automations sequences. So I was very interested in the Salt Lake City Dig into Marketo Nurture programs that they ran last month. Also looking forward to the session that you're going to be doing at the end of September for the migrating, just making sure, even though none of your panelists are doing MailChimp to Marketo, it does help to just refresh, like making sure I have all of my T's crossed and I's dotted as I move tracking over, as I move automation sequences over, and just any type of data management. So we're lots also, like as Kelly said, there's always something on the list. It's figuring out how to prioritize that, and then also how do I get to that back burner list that I feel like I never get to. So lots of lists.
That's exciting. I have just written a blog article about a week ago talking about the difference between marketing automation and email marketing. That goes back to a webinar in 2015 that Marketo put on. And it's interesting to know, I mean, it's 2015, it's a 5-year-old webinar. But that difference from email and marketing and marketing automation is huge. I've been working on I've actually just finished off a project helping some friends on a MailChimp instance too. And not the normal work that I do, but something that they needed for a short period of time, which is why marketing automation wasn't necessarily the fit for them. But to give you kind of a context of it, they had about 125,000 people in their MailChimp database that they were working out to, actually. So really interesting to kind of see kind of the work that was happening there and all the different parties that are involved in that. Wouldn't recommend it long term, but it's interesting that, some of these tools can be used in the short run to be able to do just different ad hoc projects that you need to have if you just need something quick and dirty to kind of set up right away. So kind of interesting to kind of see with that. And thank you. Yeah, we'd love to have you in the migration session, and I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting, learnings that you can action from there too. Warren, let me pass it to you, and then I think we're just about out of time, but we'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on this. And
oh yeah, no, I'm working on something I'm super excited about. Actually, we're using Marketo as an internal ticket request to then automate a Asana ticket that's then logged, but also produces the On24 webinar. And then where we want to get to is we want to automate from the ticket request to actually create the campaign in its entirety. So bringing on tools like Knack as well to go, what about if we were to automate everything? Is that possible? And so we're actually about 60% there at the moment. So it's kind of an interesting one. So I'm working with a talented web developer on that. And it's particularly, I think, as as we're under pressure with terms of resource, at least from the colleagues that I've spoken to, it's like, oh, how do we do now more with less and get onto the more exciting stuff where we actually want to use and kind of informative in terms of the way that you'd produce the content. And certainly that's my view of, well, actually you could phrase it like this on the email, but I've seen better performance at XYZ. So I'm trying to remove all that marketing operations people just copying and pasting, which is I hate doing personally. So yeah, I'm excited about that one.
I also want to, just kind of shamelessly embarrass you here for a moment and just talk a little bit about a post that you had done recently about, I think you and Sanford were working on some scripting to be able to share email tokens and be able to do that in Outlook and what was it? You had in some interesting scripting that you guys were developing, I think, on how to be able to share email events, and it ties in with. I'm bringing this up because Josh and Grace in Auckland have produced a new video for the Automation Geeks that just talks about different types of tokens and how those are used. And I think there's some limitations in terms of event tokens that you ideally you put them in your email. You're able to kind of download an ICS file for Outlook purposes, but they don't always work on Google Calendar. Interesting to hear, and I need to dive into your content there a little bit, but I believe you've added some value into that conversation.
Yeah, that's right. So we've actually brought this question to Sanford. So it was using his Agile bits that he'd posted on a previous blog. And what it does is it removes the need for the ICS token, therefore enabling you to, it just works a bit better with Google Calendar. And also you can set the reminders and set the specific join URL as well, if it's kind of a shared URL straight from that. And I just think that's a way that we can add value in terms of getting more attendance, which is just a simple thing, but we've done that by kind of scripting a better calendar than the ICS thing, and it just works kind of more seamlessly, and it's built into the token, the script token that you were sort of just alluding to. So I posted that script that maybe you can share after the call, but we brought that question to Sanford, and he was able to like remove a few of the roadblocks that we were having.
Very cool. All right, guys. So I want to respect everybody's calendar. Let's take you home. If you want to attend any of these sessions or you missed any of them, you can see the ones that have already happened in August at the YouTube channel at Marketo Virtual User Group. So we're conversionstore.com/video, and then pull up content there. Next month, we do this at the beginning of every month. So the first weekday of every month, which is Thursday, October 1st, 2020. We'll do it around 12:30 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. We've already confirmed Andy Carone from Revenue Pulse as one of our panelists, and I'm just finalizing dates. I believe Kat, who's one of the co-leaders of the Montreal Mug, is going to join us as well. And that just waiting for confirmation from her, and we'll have a third as well. Want to give sincere thanks to Kelly Trentow and Becca Walters from the Wisconsin, the Minneapolis, the Milwaukee Mug and the Iowa Mug for your attendance in this as well too. So thank you both for coming in here, and if you have anything else you want to kind of add just as we're signing off, happy to have you.
Thanks for having us. That was awesome, and I really enjoyed it. And Warren, I really want to see that script.
Yeah, it was actually, it was more of the product of the, so just disclaimer, it was more of the product of the web developer. I just enjoy pushing it as far as we can go.
That's cool.
No, it's a good need for sure. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. And this will be on recording on YouTube. Feel free to share it through social media. And we'll see you guys in October.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.